Walton Goggins, I thought you had the role of a lifetime on Justified, and now and here in The Hateful Eight, you have a very, we're not going to get into spoilers today, but you have a very substantial role here.
Yeah, it kind of it redefines kind of the role of a lifetime. You know, when I got the call from Quentin to come to his home and to read this story, you know, any actor that gets that call from Quentin Tarantino doesn't ask questions, and you just say yes. That's just what you do, because very few people have been afforded that invitation, and you know that it is going to be you're going to measure your life as who I was before this experience and who I am afterwards. That was my experience on Django, and then when I got to his house and I started reading this script, and I got to a chapter in particular, I just my mouth dropped, and it was everything to kind of hold those emotions in and just to read it from an objective point of view, knowing that Quentin Tarantino is asking you to be in his story as a person out of his imagination, and in this way in particular. So you know, at the end of it, I was relatively loud. I was pretty loud, like throughout the process, sitting outside, and he was sitting inside, and he could just hear me saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," and then afterwards he walked out, and he didn't have to ask me what I thought. He just said, "So?" I just took a deep breath and I said, "I really only have one question for you, and that is, am I the sheriff of Red Rock, or am I not the sheriff of Red Rock?" And he said, "I need for you to answer that question, and I don't want to know the answer that you come up with to that question." And so for me, it's like the gold briefcase in Pulp Fiction. You know, no one will ever know that, really, but me.
That's a question that, because of your character, the type of character, his background, that all the characters in the movie are questioning all throughout.
Yeah, and he's, you know, I don't know, help me, but I don't want to give anything away, but, you know, Chris Mannix is an agitator. He's a blowhard, he's a rebel rouser. He's a person that if you have an exposed wound, he's going to stick his finger in it and create controversy. He stirs the pot. But you quickly learn that, you know, you're dealing with a guy who is in an arrested state of development. And it is over the course of this movie that the layers of that onion is peeled back, and you realize who he is and where his worldview and how his worldview has been dictated, and you see what ultimately comes to what happens to a person who can actually think for himself, and I think I can say that without giving anything away. You know, Chris Mannix in this movie is able to go from A, not just to Z, but maybe from A to Z, back to A, and then to, let's say, L or M. You know, and that's you know, that's an extraordinary experience in any moving picture. But to have that experience in a Quentin Tarantino feature is, you know, it's the gift of a lifetime, man.
When you were on Justified, that was a modern-day Western, I would say, set in Kentucky. Here is more of an old-school type Western with the Tarantino twists and turns and language. Just Can you talk about the differences in the two?
Well, I guess I could talk about the similarities as much as I could talk about the differences, and the similarities being Elmore Leonard is the author of the short story that Justified was based on, Fire in the Hole, and we all know Quentin's affection for Elmore Leonard. That's not a secret, and what an important influence Elmore was on Quentin's work. I suppose the similarities between the two characters are their loquacious nature, and their ability with words. But I think that speaks more to the similarities between Elmore and between Quentin. You know, Quentin writes lyrical poetry, and there is a cadence and a sacredness to them, and they roll off your tongue in a way that is not, as you can't just hear it. You know, you don't just hear it. Like when you hear Christopher Walken talk about The Watch, or you hear Major Warren in this particular movie talk about one big long monologue, you see it. And it's the same is true for Chris Mannix. Like even his exposition, put the way that Quentin puts his words, when it comes out of the mouth of an actor, it no longer, it ceases to be exposition. It is a visual and an auditory exercise or buffet, if you will.
When we spoke a few years ago, it was on a web chat, and it was right after you got an Emmy nomination. You said you screamed so loud you woke up your baby.
I sure did, yeah.
I've got you moved into my Oscar predictions. If you were to get an Oscar nomination, what kind of sounds would come out of your house?
You know, I don't know. I'd probably burn it down. It'd be done. Then I'd have to like look for a new house. This is going to sound trite, but getting the opportunity to work with this man in this way, in any way, really, but then in this way, that is the award, you know. But just to be considered, just to be included in this group of people, and these actors, and it's it's extraordinary, and I don't know. That's for other people to decide. I know that I have gotten an award worthy of a lifetime of experiences, and something that I'm a new father. And I say a new father. My son is 5 years old, and there are things that I've collected along the way that, in an effort to give him things, tokens that really mean a lot to me. And the one thing that no one can ever take away from me now is, as my son gets older, he will have this movie to look at, you know, and he will have Django to look at, and that his father has been in 2 Quentin Tarantino movies, and in The Hateful Eight he's been in this Quentin Tarantino movie in this way, and that's extraordinary, man. That's worth everything in the bank.
Well, great performance, great movie. Thanks.
It really means a lot, man. Thank you. It's good to talk to you again, Chris.
You too.
Yeah, man.